Hi, book club members. I'm Jen.
And I'm Carrie.
And this is Warhammer 40k Book Club, where we read from a crag. This is episode number 95, and our book is Dawn of Fire, The Iron Kingdom by Nick Kyme. It tells the story of the Indomitus Crusade trying to pick up another night house, as you do. We posted several questions on our website, WH40kbookclub.com, and we encourage participation in our conversations via Encrypted Vox channel, YouTube, or our site. Spoiler warning. If you haven't yet read this book, definitely check it out because we're going to be discussing the book from start to finish in great detail. With that, let's dive in. Did you like the book?
I did. Until the fucking epilogue.
Whoa! Starting off spicy tonight.
Yeah. Everything was going fine. I'm enjoying this presentation of how everything sucks. And, the Imperium the Imperium sucks in this way, and this night planet also sucks in their own way. It just shows how nobody can win in this world. But then you had to go and bring the goddamn shards of Erebus into it, because who asked for that? And go on ahead and get your cups, people. Because if I wasn't reading the Horus Heresy right now, I would have no idea what the big deal was with these shards. And people out there who've never read the Horus Heresy, and I mean read the Horus Heresy, so that they know about the sword that Erebus stole, how he turned it into 8 ritual daggers called the Athames that he passed out to people. Unless you knew all that stuff, you're probably like, what the hell is this? And you should be, what the hell is this? Because it doesn't make sense. It's like the Chewbacca defense. It doesn't make sense. Don't give me this look, woman. You're just like, oh.
No, what's really funny about this?
And I just love this book, and I don't know what she's saying. Yeah, you're full of shit.
No, what's funny about it is that I hate, to quote Roger Ebert, I hated this book. Did I hate it? I know the movie he's referring to in that, so is it as bad as that? No. No. Nothing was that bad. But I did not like this book at all. I really hated it. And the really funny thing is I was just going to basically pull off like a Men on Sports or Men on Movies. Hated it. And you enjoyed the book, and you just went like on a way more passionate rant than I was going to. And I didn't dislike this book. I hated this book.
The reason why this passionate rant is because they're bringing in something that to me doesn't make any sense, and I don't know why it's here, and nobody asked for it.
We are going to, so after we discuss the book in general, we're going to have a little bit of meta commentary around the Dawn of Fire series in general. And I'm definitely, that's going to be a talking point for me. But I agree with you in that I got to that point and I was like, was there a person, and I mean this as an honest question, because if you've listened to this podcast, you should know I am always genuinely curious about this fandom. Were there people who were sitting around going, gee, what happened to the Anathames from the Horus Heresy? Like, what did Erebus do with these? What happened to those shards? Were there people who were wondering about that? Because if you are, explain. From a curiosity, like a science, like explain yourself. Like I legitimately wonder if this was a thing. And I have a really big complaint about them that I will save for my more meta commentary about the Dawn of Fire series in general. That's why I had to give you that look, though, because I was like, wow, I hated this book, and you're like way more passionate than I am.
If there wasn't that epilogue, I would have been like, yeah, this was actually a really enjoyable book. I really enjoyed its presentation of how it showed how much everything kind of sucks right now, and everyone's being pouty because everything sucks and it's not going their way. I totally get that.
Did we really need another book?
I will say, I didn't see the epilogue coming. So, I guess kudos for the surprise there.
I can't even get behind that. I can't even get behind that because I actually think that made me hate it a little even bit more. That I was like, whoa, that was out of left field. This book, if I had to,
I was trying to say something nice.
Okay, that's fair. I'm going to go like a way more into this again when we get into like talking about the Dawn of Fire in general, but I felt like this whole book was squirrel. Like, every time I would start to like begrudgingly start to get into somebody's story, right? Like Orla's, right? Like we're getting into like all the stuff that's going on with Orla, and then Squirrel Morgan. And I'm like, oh, hi, God, I forgot the Black Templars were a thing. So then I'm reading through them, and I'm like, okay, actually, maybe I'm a little intrigued about what's going on. Squirrel, Kesh, like, whoa, okay, yeah, all right, Kesh. I'm okay. I'm actually Kesh's story was the only one that I was emotionally involved into, which was really funny because you and I have both gone on record saying how disappointed we were that Kesh lived at the end of Gate of Bones because we were both kind of like, why though? And we'll talk a lot about Kesh in a second, but it surprised me, and this was one of the parts that stood out to me. I actually loved all of Kesh's story, and I loved um the Sister of Silence's name just totally
I
escaped
think
me.
it's Cyrennial, something like that.
Serenial. Yes, thank you. Serenial. I really liked her story. I liked her. I liked her story. I thought that was great. Um, that was about it. Those are really the only positives I have to say. But I did really like those chapters, and I didn't see that. But again, like I would be so emotionally invested in them, and then Squirrel, Lyric. Why do I? We're gonna talk a lot about Lyric in a minute here. Laroc, Lyric,
Lyric.
Laroc,
We'll just say
Lyric.
Lyric.
Go with Lyric, guys. Sorry. Um, I will talk more about him later, but I every time his chapters came up, his and Morrigan's chapters, every time they came up, I was like, why are we here? What are we doing with this? And I still feel that way. Um, what part stood out to you?
So the sad thing is, I was looking over at my notes, and I didn't actually write down anything that stood out to me because when Orla throws her hissy fit, I immediately went further back into the book and made all these notes of the timeline, like where she's telling the council, we know that we're part of the Imperium. We know that this is going to happen. I am going to, help the people so they can understand that this is going to happen and that they won't be afraid. And that, oh my God, my daughter decayed a little bit in 6 years of stasis, and that's it. Show's over. I'm throwing a fit. And I was like, wait, hold on, what? Went back, started taking copious notes. So, really, the part that kind of like stood out to me, according to like everything that I wrote down over here, was how much she. So, this week, I got to see the Critical Drinker for the first time. I've heard about him for a while. I've never seen anything before because Willow got canceled. It's not renewed for a
Oh,
second season. And so a friend of mine was like, well, maybe, I was like, I know nothing about it. Like, what is it? So he sent me the Critical Drinker's analysis of it. And I'm laughing my butt off watching this because of a few things he said. And one of the things he said was it stars strong female character whose only redeeming personality is that she's a strong female character. And that's kind of how I feel about what Orla is. She's a strong female character. And as a strong female character, the only thing she knows how to do is to throw a fit. And that has actually been one of my personal things, and I know one of Jen's personal things, that they feel that strong female characters have to throw their weight around, have to throw a fit over because something didn't go their way. Because that to me is not a strong female character. That's a petty bitch. There's a big difference between a bitch
And
and a
dive
strong
into
female
Orla.
character.
Let's go ahead and dive into Orla because there's a lot to be said there, and I agree with you entirely. It actually reminded me of two things from the Song of Ice and Fire. And I'm going to reference the Song of Ice and Fire a lot in this podcast tonight, so I apologize in advance. But there is a scene, I think it's in the third book, Storm of Swords, where one of Daenerys's advisors, she's basically like, I'm so good at this. Like, I'm really awesome. And he's like, conquest, fighting is easy, ruling is hard. We saw that with Robert, right? That was basically Robert Baratheon's whole story was that winning the war was easy, being the king is hard. And I feel as though Orla was probably a very good military commander when she had like when her because they talk about when the rift happens, right? They've got the greenskins there, they've got cultists, they've got all sorts of stuff, and like when you could point her at a clear enemy and she just needed to get a victory, I'm sure she was great. But when it actually comes to having to deal with the sticky situation of dealing with the Imperium, she falls apart. And one of the things that I always talk about is the Sex and the City school of feminism, which is when they were always just like, look at these strong female characters. And it was like, their sole personality traits are they like shoes and sex. Wow. Fucking feminism right there. Betty Friedan's so proud. Um, this is that same kind of sort of mentality of that she is dictated entirely by her emotions, and she feels the need to constantly remind you that she is a ruler and she is a strong ruler. And just look, I don't want to belittle her emotional stance, because losing a child, horrible. And I have no doubt that she went through a second grief seeing her child. It's one thing to know that your daughter died off in another war,
Mm-hmm.
and then but to actually see her body after 6 years, yeah, totally. But you know what, as they mentioned in this book, a custodes was left on that planet, buried underneath rubble ignominiously. Okay? Thousands upon thousands of sons and daughters were just left on that planet. And if you remember Gate of Bones, that wasn't super cool. They just got left. Your daughter was transported back to you, held in a stasis field for 6 years because of your value to the Imperium. And you're just like, I can't believe they let her rot. I maybe dropped the C word multiple times reading this book. Just a spoiled, rich, privileged cunt. Like a laser through the air. Sorry.
Well,
I
but
yeah.
it's like, it's one of those things, like, I feel like they were trying to make her out to be a sympathetic, strong female character.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like she was none of those things. Like, as a woman, and maybe women, because we're like always hard on one another, but I can't imagine even men sympathizing with her, because every note that I took, so I'm trying to follow, because I was just trying to follow her logic here. And so I took a lot of notes with like her decisions she was making throughout the book. And she just kept saying, like, all these things that have happened to me. First of
Like,
all,
do you think
some of these are your
owned?
own fault.
Word.
Um, like she was like, oh, like, have you noticed the ravages inflicted on our lands? You mean because you killed everybody, so the Marines malevolent were like, oh, it's on. What did you think was going to happen?
Just that. Like when she talks about like at the Rift, right? When she's like,
Uh-huh.
oh, you don't understand, like we had to fight off greenskins.
Katie is gone.
Join the club, pumpkin.
Like, you're not
Like,
alone here.
Katie is gone. The 500 worlds were invaded by Nurgle. Like, you're to quote one of my favorite political commentators, Jimmy Dore, your pain is ordinary.
Compared to the rest of the
Like,
Imperium, yeah.
yeah, and as you said, like, oh, they stomped all over our lands. Uh,
First of all,
yeah, the
you
Imperium.
killed innocent people at dinner.
Yeah, you and this is the
Unarmed
part that really
people.
bothers me. This is what really bothers me is that they kill a custodes. They kill a custodian.
And she was all like, they sent assassins my mist. They did. But then you started shit. So they
Here's
had
the
to
thing.
act.
You can't lure a bunch of people into a room, kill them, and then be like, oh, they had assassins in there. I'm I'm sorry, did the assassin try to kill you after you launched a trap on them to kill them all?
Like,
And by the
nobody
way,
moved at
here's the
all.
thing.
Like, I don't really think that Vicellum was going to kill her immediately. I feel like he was coming to the front, like, whoa, 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 what are you
I feel like he
doing?
was gonna be like, let's all calm down.
Yeah, like, what is going on? What are you
Let's take
doing?
a breather.
Yeah, and Serenial didn't make the move until after Vicellum was dead.
Yeah. But I did like that it was only like only one person around her was like, you killed a custodes. Like, this is the Emperor's private guard. And then you're like, I just can't believe they're being so rude about all this. Mm-hmm. And here's the other thing too, and maybe this is again, maybe this is just this is unfair of me, and maybe you're right. Maybe we're just hypercritical of women characters, but the second that Ecria was introduced, I was like, oh, something's not right with this woman. The way she was talking and everything, like there were just certain comments and phrases she made. I was like, this woman's not on the level.
So Ekria, I was like, okay, Ekria
How did she not notice that?
is definitely pushing you towards war. Like she's giving you
Yes,
really bad advice. And at first, like she was like, we can't do that. You know,
right,
we're part of the Imperium. Oh, you're right, my queen. Okay, I was like, well, maybe she's just one of those who wants to fight for independence. Every
right,
world has them. All right.
totally.
But I didn't really think anything was wrong until I noticed, like, where has she been? She's been kind of gone. And then, like, a few chapters later, then Orla was like, where is Ekria? Of course, and
Yeah,
then the big question is, was she always demon possessed? Or does something just happen?
we will talk more about that when we talk about Lyric because their stories are now apparently intertwined.
Yes.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I have to imagine yes because she always presented to me as just off. And now maybe it's because of, the number of books we've been reading lately and like I'm always now looking for the character who's not on the level. But yeah, this person is clearly pushing you towards war and like I don't know. I did not I think she was probably again, I keep saying I'm like Orla was probably a great commander. But commanders do not make good leaders. And
I don't even know how good of a commander she was, to be honest. I really
yeah, you
don't.
don't really get to see it. You get told she's good, but we're never
And the
shown.
reason why I say that is because even if you won this battle with the Imperium here, you haven't won the war. You're going to be annihilated.
Oh my god.
Whereas before they were coming in under, yes, they're going to come and take everything because that's what the Imperium does. I don't know where you've been. But at least then they're going to work with you. But when you start this battle, not only is everyone going to be killed, they're just going to take.
Yes.
They're not going to try
Yeah.
to do the illusion of working with you. They're just going to take.
And that's I think the part that just I can't get behind her as a character is that you doomed your entire planet. Your
Everything
entire
I've done is for my people. Like I even wrote this thing where she's like, where she's weeping for the trespassing of her world, the culture and history forever lost. I'm like, that is all your fault. All
all your
your
fault.
fault.
Like look, and I honestly believe this because we've seen this in other places. Assassinorum Kingmaker, much. You guys, much like the Mechanicum, are allies. We are going to take from you, but you're still going to be a knightly world. Like, why all of a sudden you think the rift fell? Like, you guys were allied with the Imperium before the rift. So this is what, 6, 7, 8 years maybe? Like, all of a sudden the culture that you built up in 8 years? This is not a company where culture just pops into existence, right? Because you bought some Nerf guns and a foosball table. Like, I what? Like all of a sudden now, and basically you doomed your entire planet
To
because you were
servitude.
sad. Because you were sad. If she would, that as you said, like strong female, like we're constantly told how strong this character is, but we are shown she is emotional and driven by emotion. And again, I'm not saying that like you can't grieve your kid, but as the ruler of a world, you can't really grieve your kid in that way. And you can't doom your entire planet.
See, and that is where I actually like really liked her brother. Because he
Yes.
was calling her out. He's like,
Garrett is amazing.
like, you can't, you're letting your grief rule this. And she's like, but
Mhm.
they did this. He's like, but you chose to do this. This is a bad choice. We are not going to survive. And he was like the
Yeah,
voice of reason.
very much so. I loved his character. I thought he was such a good foil to her. And it that really upset me. That we're presented with this character again. I do not again, actions speak louder than words, right? And you can keep saying like, "Oh, she's such a strong character and she's just so amazing and look how strong she is." But if his intention was to show that dichotomy between being a good commander and being a good ruler or thinking you're strong but not actually being strong, like if that was the intent, 10 out of 10. But just from reading this book, I do not get the impression that that was the intent. I
Now,
think we were supposed to find her very strong and admirable.
and one reason why I also believe that is because, because we had the limited edition. There was an intro
Mhm.
by Nick Kyme where he talked about how Jessivane, her daughter, died heroically. And right there and then, I was like, no, she did not. She died pig-headedly. We even discussed this when in our podcast with Gate of Bones. Like,
Mhm.
we're like, she didn't have to die. Like, she brought about her own death. And so just for the fact that Nick Kyme said she died heroically, obviously he and I have different ideas of what a strong female character is. And another problem that I have with strong female characters is the fact that they keep getting written that they're strong female characters. Everyone talks about how strong they are. You know what? That is like those couples on Facebook talk about how they have the best marriage and the best husband whatsoever. Are you trying to convince yourself or me? Because
And
if you're trying to convince me, actions speak louder than words, which is why I would say that Kesh and Serenial are the true strong female characters. Ariadne is
very
not a
much
strong female character because, again, she was a bitch. And I remember
there.
I went to this many years ago at some convention. I went to a fantasy authors panel. And I'll never forget at this panel, I had not read a single Wheel of Time book at this point. But all these women, because they were female, all of them were female authors. And they all talked about how one thing that they said that it's really hard to write strong female characters in these books because you have to like make them actually strong without being bitchy. And this one woman said, she's like, my best friend is Robert Jordan. And we get in fights all the time because he says he writes strong women. And I said, no, they're bitchy. And that probably clouded my view on Wheel of Time when I finally did read it. I was like, oh my God, that woman was right. These are not strong women, they're bitchy.
It's
And I,
weird.
and I know that it's hard. And this was so many years ago.
Right.
And I understand, especially for men, and honestly, probably in our current environment, society environment, I think it might be hard to write strong female characters because we get told that this is what they should be. And I think a lot of people get confused between actual strong women and bitches. And I have to say, if you've worked in corporate, you know the difference between a strong woman and a bitch. If you've ever had a female boss, you know exactly what I'm talking about because unfortunately, female bosses fall in one or two camps. They're strong women or they're bitches. And I mean, you can say something about men. They're good bosses or they're just complete dicks. And just some women, they feel like the only way they can be that strong woman to be taken seriously is to be a bitch. And
And
that's
that's
and that's how I
it.
see Orla. But unfortunately, I feel like Nick Kyme thinks this is what a strong woman is, a complete bitch.
It's oftentimes we're presented with strong female characters, air quotes around that, where if this same behavior was presented in a male character, we would call that character toxic. Toxic masculinity. So if Orla was Orlo and was a man thinking nothing but of his own grief and his own stuff and his own sadness, and he was getting pissy and angry, and, oh, they stomped all over my flowers. Would you be praising his strength, or would you be saying that he was a weak, fragile, toxic male? It's that bitchiness concept of like, for some reason, and I have worked with women like this my whole career, where you find these some women who are just like, oh, I need to be an asshole, and I need to intend, and I know that they're being assholes. They know that they are be, but that's because that they're like, well, that's what a strong person does. And no, it isn't. Again, I want you to ask, if we change this character's sex, how do you feel about this character? If this is a dude now, if that changes your opinion on the character, probably not a strong female. after all.
Right.
Um, and it's so hard because there's really not a lot of very strong mother characters who've been presented to us, right? You have Ellen Ripley, who's really more of a surrogate mother, and she's perfect. She's awesome. But like, you have her, you have Mrs. Brisby
What about
from
well, for Warhammer 40k? What about the mother in oh my god, Eduardo Albert's Carcaridan's book? Can't remember what it was called right now, but
was very much she was Silent Hunter. She was very
thank
much
you.
the Mrs. Brisby school of strong females. I will actually say right now another very strong mother character that we were presented, who is a very good direct contrast to this, is the mother from Assassinorum Kingmaker, if you recall, the one who actually is totally siding over to chaos. That woman is take no she's not an asshole, she's not a bitch, she's just very strong, she's confident. She does not need to remind people how strong and confident she is. That's the other thing, is that, again, another George R. R. Martin quote, but the king who needs to remind everyone he's king is no king. If you constantly have to remind people that you are the queen and leader of this world.
Which I think actually was one of his brilliant points he was making with Cersei.
Yes, exactly. If she reminds me so much more of Cersei than she does of, say, trying to think of a good example from that world who I really do like. Brienne of Tarth, probably a great
Hmm.
example right there. Compare her to Brienne. Hell, even compare her to
I,
Catelyn
I was
Stark.
gonna say Catelyn, yeah.
Catelyn, same, right? Um, it was just a little frustrating for her, but so let's talk about two of the other female characters that we had in here. Let's talk about Kesh, because I know you and I both went into this book with somewhat strong opinions on Kesh. She's returned. What? First off, what's going on with Kesh? Is she Domino? Is
I
she
was gonna
just
say,
super
other than
lucky?
the fact that luck is her mutant power, I mean,
Is she a saint?
I
Is she
don't
marked?
think she's a saint, but I almost wonder if she's somehow a psyker, like a light touch psyker, kind of like almost in a way, Caiaphas Cain, because he would talk
Oh,
about his palms itching. You know that, but she hers like comes in luck. Like a knight has its gun leveled at her. She's like, I am going to die, and it misfires and it jams. I mean, you know,
yeah.
Serenial can't get in to that Vox room, and she's just like, you do it. One hit, the glass shatters.
Yep.
Which
And it's not like
actually,
Serenial was not a strong woman.
right.
Right. Now, is it possible that she loosened the glass for Cassia? Totally. But
Well, yes,
I went into this
but
book very skeptical about her. And you know what, though? She is a character who is an unbelievably strong female character, because she one of the things that I always say is that, or one of my favorite quotes that I heard years ago, and I always use it a lot, is that, right, courage is not being afraid. So like, whenever people talk about how brave the Space Marines are, no, they're not. They don't feel fear. They're not brave. Courage and bravery is being afraid but doing the thing anyways.
mm-hmm,
Kesh's confidence inside, she has all sorts of doubts and questions, right? Like, oh my God, like, what am I doing? Why am I still here? Like, this doesn't make any sense. I don't really know if I'm making the right decisions. And yet, she's still, hey, we got to do this. I need to do this. I have questions. She's not afraid to admit her weakness either. She's a totally, like, I'm messed up right now. Like,
mm-hmm,
when she and Serenial are running, she can also stop Serenial and be like, you are giving us away right now because you're bleeding everywhere. Right? And Serenial, same. She can sit there and be like, yeah, you're right. I need to think about other humans for a minute, and then we can keep on going.
mm-hmm.
Very, very dynamic duo. 100% invested in their story.
I was really
Love
happy.
Kesh.
I know I said I was disappointed that Kesh lived in Gate of Bones, but I was very happy that Serenial survived.
And I was very excited that Kesh survived this book, too. I'm actually, this is, and we'll talk again more about this when we talk about the Dawn of Fire series in general. The concept of her potentially maybe being a saint or somehow being marked, I'm here for it.
Hmm.
I really liked the way he wrote her. I was devastated when Diablo died because I just want Kesh to have a friend. Like when she kind of was starting to get like, like, oh, hey, he's kind of funny and I can laugh with him, and just wanted her to have a friend because when Dvorkin died, I was a little crushed for her.
Oh, I was very crushed for her when Dvorkin died.
This woman has had a lot thrown at her. I'm just saying.
Mm-hmm.
And isn't trying to doom an entire planet because her pain is ordinary in the Warhammer 40k universe.
Right.
Did I mention her pain is ordinary? Uh,
Once or
I'll let that
twice.
one go eventually. I'll let that one go eventually. Um, really, really liked her. I hope she shows up in other books. I do
Well,
kind of
she
want to know
might.
what's going on.
You said that she's shipping out, so
That's true.
going somewhere else in the Indominus Crusade.
I also love her litany. I'm a daughter of darkness. I fear no shadow. So good. Let's talk about Ariadne.
Do I have to?
Ariadne has a lot of opinions. What did you make of her philosophy?
You know,
Her,
the thing that makes me the saddest about Ariadne is that her name is probably my favorite name in all of Greek literature,
oh yeah,
and the bitch ruined it.
yeah.
I don't even know what her philosophy is.
You know what?
Aside
God,
from complaining that everybody wants to have sex with her all the time.
calm the fuck down, girl.
Yeah, and it's like, oh,
Like,
okay.
seriously. And that's another thing that like this was there was a scene where she's sitting there and she's staring at Useless and she's just like, ugh, he's so brutish and blah 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 blah, and look how he's doing this and look how ridiculous he is. Ugh, he's so petty. Says the woman obsessing about everything that he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
Pot, kettle. Um,
Also, your
really,
petty mouth is what got you sent down to this planet in the first place.
yeah. Like I, um, I also, and you know what? You were, you're on a bridge with an Imperial naval commander, a Custodes, a bunch of other commanders from other ships. Like this is a huge gathering. And you thought that that was the part to place to bring up your petty ass. Why does he get to go and I don't? You thought that that was the professionalism. Learn it.
That's probably like the one thing I liked in any situation was when she was in that, makeshift prison and the gangbangers were all calling her a bean counter. It's like,
Yeah,
it's really what you are.
pretty much. God, I hated so much of that stuff too. Um, the thing about her, and this is just in general. This is a general, more overall Warhammer 40k commentary. I'm getting a little sick of the hand wringing about war is pointless and the Imperium just destroys everything. Yes,
I mean,
that's what it
are
does.
you new here? It's been doing this since before the Horus Heresy.
Yes, this is the nature of it. Like, yes, we know. We've
I
got the
mean,
point here. Your
when
option,
when they landed in Caliban all those many years ago to claim the lion, and they brought in their technology, and everyone was bemoaning, "You're mowing down our forests and putting these factories in the pollution." They've been doing this for 10,000 years. They're not going to stop now
are you
because you're just now
new here?
realizing that they take.
And like when she's sitting there and she's just like, war is pointless. Pumpkin, you were born into the wrong century, the wrong millennium, because that's all it is. In the grim dark future, there is only war. Because, just as a little reminder here, is the Imperium a brutal fascist dictatorship that chews things up and spits them out?
Yes.
100%. But your option is that or the same, but with the joy of mutation and murder and being turned into a flesh chair or tortured for all of human history or having your soul scattered across the warp.
Or
Like,
just be the blood sacrifice of the day.
them's the options. What'll it be? Like, is the whole point of Warhammer 40k is that it's death by hanging or death by firing squad?
Right?
Which would you prefer? It is the vomit milkshake or shit sandwich. And that's part of what makes it fun, right?
Right.
Like, so whenever these characters pop up and war is just so pointless. We could have done all of this peacefully. Are you new here?
You know, and the thing is, when she was saying that, she's like, we could have done this so peacefully. I was like, okay, hun, y'all were doing it peacefully.
Yeah. Maybe arguably a little rudely
I mean,
and a little crudely.
maybe bringing the Marines Malevolent along with you is not the best idea. I mean, I don't know why you
The
guys
kid and angry Marines.
I don't know why you guys brought them to a world that you're claiming and, peacefully to be part of this. You need okay, there already is Black Templars, but you need little more. You need some
More Storm Reapers, maybe.
maybe Storm
Less
Reapers,
Marines
no
Malevolent.
Nova Marines, little calming
A little calming factor.
Imperial Fists. Imperial Fists would be great. Because they
Right.
understand about building the readouts and the sieges and all of that. They would be totally accommodating for
Mm-hmm.
that. Marines Malevolent, I mean, they're bringing literal bulls into china shops here.
Like, when Reynard basically is thinking and he's like, yeah, it's kind of weird that they are bolstering the Marines Malevolent with Primaris Marines. I actually had the same thought. Now, again, there's a time and a place for everything. Obviously, everybody serves a purpose and has their role to play in the Imperium. But the Marines Malevolent, I mean, these guys are kind of on par with the Flesh Terrors in terms of we don't play well with humans.
No, these are the guys that you send out to go reclaim worlds from chaos and just be like, go have fun.
Understand like having them on reserve because you're showing up on this planet, you don't really know what's going on. Like they've been stuck behind the rift, maybe just to have them kind of as a threat, like on backhand, on the back burner. I totally get all of that.
But don't
Totally,
send them
but
down to the planet.
do not. And especially not with the Storm Reapers who are already down there. Like you just needed to send in more Storm Reapers.
And the Storm Reapers like, be cool, guys. Like, just be cool, be
Pretty
nice.
much. But let me ask you this question about Ariadne. What what purpose did her story serve the narrative?
None.
Other than hand wringing about how awful the Imperium is?
And how everyone wants to have sex with her.
Yeah.
None.
Yeah, the arrogance on her
You
was
could
because here's
have
the thing.
you could taken out all of her chapters, even Usulis. All of those chapters and nothing. The probably the only point where she did something was when they had that confrontation with that farmer
Mhm.
and she got him to calm down. And then, of course, the sovereigns showed up and they were like, see, the queen is not on your side, And then they had a firefight, but that was it. And that could have been, honestly, anybody. So,
It could have just been like some random or some rando.
yeah,
And
she.
you bring up a good point there. Again, with the timeline,
Mm-hmm.
this could have been done peacefully. The sovereigns were being sent in by the queen. The queen had already orchestrated this entire thing for the delegation. So you can sit there and you can wring your hands about, oh, it's so awful, it's going to be so peacefully. No, no, the timeline says otherwise. Things were already in movement here.
Also,
And,
there was kind of some civil unrest going on that the queen didn't really mention was
yeah,
going on.
that was a little weird, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Forgot that part. Um, One of the things, again, going back to something that you just said, again, showing me and not or telling me but not showing me, is they keep talking about how, as you said, oh, this guy is just constantly coming on to me, and oh, all he wants to do is sexually harass me. Well, I haven't seen it yet. He's an asshole.
Yeah.
I'm not going to argue that, right? Definitely an asshole.
Very smug.
Definitely very smug. Definitely a couple power play moves there, right? I'm not going to argue that. But it didn't feel like sexual harassment per se. And her constantly just, oh, he just wants me so badly. Which one of you is the petty dick that we're not supposed to like? Just curiosity. You're telling me this. You are not showing me this. And like when he's kind of blubbering and falling apart in the prison, and she's just like, oh, he's just so useless and he's gonna get us all killed. Not really seeing it. I mean,
Because
I'm seeing him fall apart,
well, yeah,
yes, but
but there was nobody even in the prison. Like they just kind of put them there and just left.
yeah, like I don't know. I don't know what the point of her
They
was, and
have them in there
I
so that
loved
they can
Hogan.
bring they can bring a newspaper with the date on it and show it to the ships. See, they're
Right,
here. We're feeding them.
pretty much, pretty much. I really liked Ogun as a character. I thought he was great. I thought he
Oh,
deserved
he
a
was
better
my favorite
sidekick.
character.
He deserved a better sidekick than
Yeah,
Ariadne.
yeah.
Sorry.
I
Um,
didn't even
I
understand his attachment to her. It was
I didn't
so
either.
random.
It did feel very random, and I felt like it needed a better, because again, this person's not even nice.
Hmm.
Like, she's not presented as being a nice character where he would be like, "Oh yeah, I'm attracted." Like, I'm drawn to her because she's very friendly. She's not funny, so he can't be like, you amuse me, right? She's not some badass where he's like, "Oh, you're useful in combat." Like, I didn't see. She's very good at bean counting. Is is that impressive to Space Marines? Maybe it is. I don't know. Maybe the Stormreapers are really super into organization and project management.
Yeah, I doubt it. They're
I'm gonna
from
go ahead and doubt it too.
they're from the White Scars. I really doubt it.
I'm gonna go ahead and really doubt it too,
Yeah.
actually, for being honest. So okay, and then Squirrel. Throughout the book, Morrigan and Herrick, they'll have a cat and mouse constant thread. Um, did you? Let's stop right there for a sec. And were you invested in that
No,
chase?
didn't
Did it
care.
add? You like either of them?
Didn't care.
I didn't really
I
care
was
either. And
very confused by the Black Templars. You got the Imperial fleet there, and what are you guys doing? Like, don't you think maybe you should have been down there, like, helping smooth the transition? Because perhaps if you guys were there, you would have stopped some of this nonsense. Instead,
they had.
you came down and was like, don't do this or else, and left. Okay.
Well, and I mean, I liked that in the end, Morgan ended up sending guys down there because they find out that they killed the whole Imperial delegation. And I actually did like his talk to her when he showed up and he's like, you are Imperial. Like, these are not invaders.
Yeah, but she'd already killed the whole Imperial delegation by then.
Which he didn't know at that point, but like, I did like his talk, basically being like, we're not swooping in here to save you because you're Imperial. They're not invaders. This is not the Red Corsairs.
Mm-hmm.
And I did like the idea, actually. That was the only thing I liked from them when they were like, look, we have made an oath to them, we've made an oath to the Imperium, but you know what? Our oath amongst our brotherhood is way more important, and we're not going to be breaking oaths between you two fucking people. Um, until they discover that she killed the custodies and the delegation, and then, oh, okay, now we have to go down there and crack some skulls.
Well,
Because
that after they finish their thing.
Right, exactly. I did like that. I did like though that the whole, because I was kind of worried as we were getting closer to it. I was like, no, please tell me they're not going to have the Black Templars come in and be like, you guys need to be nicer. No, the Black Templars like, we don't have time for this petty bullshit. Figure it out yourself. I liked that. I thought that was very good, actually.
I did like
Um,
that, especially because you could tell she was surprised by it. She's like, "But your oaths are to me." It's like, no, bitch. Our oaths, first and foremost, are to the Imperium. But right now, we got other problems, so don't do it, or else. And then they left. I was like, oh, "Okay, sure."
I did like when she was like, turns out they don't have any honor. Really?
Says the woman who killed a whole bunch of people unawares,
Yes.
sitting down at dinner.
Again, the amount of privilege on display here was impressive. Just with her, but you promised me, like, I'm sorry, who do you think you, again, who do you think you are? You are the ruler of, yes, you have a very valuable resource with the night houses. We're not going to deny that. But at the end of the day, you're just a queen that we can depose.
Mm-hmm.
on a backwater planet, more or less,
Like,
that
you
we've
have a
been
choice
without for
here.
this long.
You can retain your culture and work with us, or we come and stamp it all out and put a figurehead in place and just take it. Oh, they're taking all our stuff. It's your fault.
Well, but it's not your stuff
And at the end,
either.
Ariadne, when she was all like, they'll say they're going to keep the culture, but we know that's not real. Um, bitch, it would have been. But they decided to throw a temper tantrum and kill a whole bunch of innocent people. So
And again,
they
you
lost.
mean to
They
tell me?
they forfeited their rights to keeping their culture, whatever that is.
And I still don't believe. Again, you guys were part of the Imperium before the Rift fell. This culture has been going around. You've already said in this book they established that this is like the centuries old culture. So how is that getting stamped out now post Rift? Like when the first time she mentions the culture thing, it's not until like the halfway point of the book when
Right.
Orla mentions it, and I'm like, where the hell did that come from? Now suddenly, again, you guys had the Imperials on your soil before the Rift opened up, so what's changing? Oh, right. Sorry. She's sad.
Right.
So we have to do. And Herrick, I just didn't really care about Herrick the whole time. Like, he was not that interesting of a foil or antagonist to me.
He was just kind of there.
He really was. Like, he showed up, I'm like, oh, he's going to cut off a bunch of heads and then leave. He had a head fetish. Like, this book, actually, with the amount of heads that got cut off, reminded me of Tarantino and Feet. Like, when we watched the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, we watched that. There were a few scenes in that movie where I was like, this is gratuitous, even for Tarantino. The feet thing. This was like that, but with head choppery.
Actually, it made me think of 300.
Oh, yeah, that works too. Yeah,
Lots
just
of heads
lots
flying
of
in
head
that
choppery.
movie.
Lots of head choppery.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I wasn't really invested in him. I didn't really him and his little BFF demon sword hunter boy. Um, I didn't really care. Like they showed up every time they showed up. I was like, oh right, yeah, they're a thing. Squirrel.
Right.
That's how it always felt. So, but speaking of squirrels and Herrick, we now have to talk about Lyric. And oh, what what did you make of that whole subplot with the Knights of Hern and
So
probably
as
Corn?
soon as he talked about having that priest there
Mm-hmm.
and them doing that ritual, I was immediately like, this feels like Moloch all over again. With, again, another horse heresy reference, but because they also had their hidden priests with their rituals, what ended up being demonic. Who knew? Um,
Well, there's 8 of you and you're drinking blood. Gee, I wonder if Hern rhymes with corn.
or I mean, it's just it's one of those like you. Yes, I'll do anything to get back into power, but I didn't realize like that was involved. I think it's like it. It's I don't
I
know. It was one.
just
It's just
didn't care.
it's a it's a story plot that I see often in Warhammer. Uh, they find these random priests like, oh yes, it is part of the Imperium, for the Emperor and all that. And like, yes, totally. Did you know the Emperor is also a sneak? Just
And and again, I'm gonna bring this point up again here in a few minutes, but we've seen this before. We've seen the night houses that are having trouble keeping their houses in order. Um, we've seen this plot device before. And quite frankly, and I know you and I were talking about this before the podcast, it reminded me a little bit of Spider-Man 3, where I'm like, I don't care about the Hobgoblin. He was the Hobgoblin of this book. Like, pick a lane, make it Herrick, make it the Imperium itself slash Orla. Like, who even cares about this? And I will say, when the priest, like, we knew that the priest was definitely not on the level,
Mm-hmm.
right? When the priest is revealed to actually be Ekria as well, and then also up on Herrick's ship, and then Lyric is up there, and they're like, "Hey, great, we got knights." Is that where this was going? I mean, to your point, I didn't see that coming. I just kind of thought they were gonna die or something.
Well, I mean, I thought Lyric, he was pretty happy that the queen died. He was like, yep, I'm going to roast alive here in my night, but that's cool because she's dead. And like one thing I'll give props to Lyric for was that he didn't want to rule. That was not his
No.
point. He was just like, but she's a tyrant. And yeah, and the King's Ward did betray him and his family. Left him out there to die. And they're like, "Oh, you're a sundered house because you were going to let us all die and we refused to die when you could have come and helped us." Oh my, it like I felt sorry for Lyric. And, and I will say, but because he didn't want to be a ruler, he's like, I don't care who rules. So he even talked about how he liked Garrett, and he was sad when he saw Garrett was in the funeral garden when he decided to pop over for a quick visit. He was like, oh crap, I didn't mean to hurt him because I like him. Um, like I thought he was a very likable, villain guy.
Yes.
And even when he went and did attacks on the village, he didn't destroy anything. He just did stuff to get people out in the open and try to bring that King's Ward out so we could finally kill him. He wasn't out to burn farms or anything. He understood the importance and he understood that the people had nothing to do with this.
Mm-hmm.
For a villain, I had much more sympathy for him than I did for her.
Yeah, I would totally agree. I actually thought he seemed like a very reasonable character. He just got duped.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
what does Chaos love if not a wounded person
I mean,
who can bring them a resource?
well, when it kind of got revealed about who the priest was, and he was just like, oh my God, I never would have done this. All I could think of was vanity. It's my favorite sin from the end of Devil's Advocate.
Yep.
Just, yeah.
It just, yeah, like, again, but again, like, as much as I, like, okay, he's somewhat interesting, he always felt very shoehorned into the narrative. In fact, his story was the first where I was like, squirrel, because
Yeah.
it just like popped up and you were like, oh, right, forgot. And then, yeah, when he shows up on the end of that ship, that was a really elaborate deception just to get a night house to join you.
Yeah, but, I could totally see that happening, though, with the Red Corsairs playing many
To be
different
fair.
games. That priest was always kind of a part of it. That's why they were just kind of hanging out. Yes, part of it was to lure the Black Templars to get that sword.
Yeah.
Part of it was, we like those toys. And that may be what the priest even offered them, in order to get their help or whatever.
Could have been. Totally. Okay. Let's get a little meta here because there's a lot to talk about. We're on book 5 of the Dawn of Fire series, right? I think it's supposed to be 10.
Yes.
What is your overall opinion of the story so far? And how does this book contribute to the Indomitus Crusade? Out of these, yeah, this one in particular.
My overall opinion of Dawn of Fire is that we should have stuck to the original plan with Dark Imperium and just been like, yes, there was Indominus Crusade. We did all this. Now we're moving on. It's been 100 years. It's cool. I feel like this is a lot of, we've already talked about George R.R. Martin. A lot of this feels kind of like that because if you don't know, The Song of Ice and Fire was supposed to be 3 books. And then it became 5. And then he said it was going to be 7. Well, we've only had 5 books, and no idea when 6 or 7 or whatever is going to come out, but his original plan was after the end of Storm of Swords, because Storm of Swords we got drawn out. But after the Storm of Swords, it was supposed to be 5 years later
Mm-hmm.
and pick things up. And then he decided, oh, I need to fill in what happened in those 5 years. No, no, you really didn't. Um, it's like a Feast for Crows. Like I read Feast for Crows and I was like, okay, I feel like there's a lot of meandering here and a lot of extra storylines we really didn't need. And then I couldn't even read A Dance with Dragons. That's really how I'm feeling here with Dawn of Fire. Is that we didn't need this. This feels like filler episodes in an anime. To be totally honest, and it feels
Agreed.
just as
100%.
rudderless as filler episodes in anime.
I, I agree entirely. Going back to the Song of Ice and Fire, the smartest thing that George R. R. Martin did with the Song of Ice and Fire, especially in those first 3 books, he never fully details Robert's rebellion.
No.
And the reason he doesn't do that is because it is an endless well from which he can constantly, do you need an antagonist? Do you need an ally? Do you need a plot twist? Do you need a conflict? It is the ultimate plot device because he can just, like, 2 characters can be sitting around and be like, oh, you remember what House Johnson did during Robert's Rebellion, right? And everyone goes, oh, yeah, I do remember. And we're like, ooh, something went down. This was perfect for the Indomitus Crusade because they could be sitting in the Dark Imperium years and then all of a sudden be like, oof, you remember what happens when the Space Wolves met the Primaris, right? And everyone goes, yeah, I remember that. You can go back to that endless reservoir. You can go back and show a story there. You can throw in some exposition, but now, unfortunately, you're showing it to us. And as you said, it is meandering and it feels like filler. And my biggest problem with these books is they need to figure out what it's about. First off, do you remember when the Indomitus Crusade, my chartreuse is over there somewhere. Do you remember when the Indomitus Crusade was going to be about the Necrons?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, Pepperidge Farms remembers. That got dropped. So, here's my biggest problem with this. Piggybacking off what you said about filler episodes in an anime. Is this series about Reboot coming back and having to navigate the treacherous waters of imperial politics?
Because that's what the first book was.
But that's already been done, and it's been done better. We've seen it in the Watchers of the Throne series, we saw it in the Vaults of Terra series, we saw it in Assassinorum Kingmaker. Like, all of these books are kind of touching on it in much better ways. Okay. Is it about the reaction to the Primaris and all of the new technology?
Well,
Okay, well,
Wolf Time was.
we've already seen that though, and we've seen it done better in places. We saw it in Belisarius Call the Great Work. We saw it in War of Secrets. We've seen it
Apocalypse.
in Apocalypse. We have seen it Shroud of Night. Like,
Yeah.
it's peppered in throughout so much better. Okay, is this book about this is this series about this overarching plot to get a magical MacGuffin that was the corrupt Cardinal Bucharest's ring and make a super weapon? I mean, that one book was, and then we kind of went back to it and referenced it here. We referenced it a little bit in Throne of Light. But these books are so scattered and all over the place and trying to tell so many stories that it's like, I guess it kind of is. And look, if you were really invested in that Cardinal Bucharest's ring story, you read about it in Gate of Bones, then you had to wait for Throne of Light to pick up the threads. And let's pretend that you were really invested in Kesh as a character. 3 books later.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, is this book about Abaddon's workings of trying to, like, plot and collect magical items like they're Pokemon? I guess. Like, that just gets the shards of Erebus, as you said, that just gets mentioned here. And again, if somebody out there was like, no, I really do want to know what Erebus is up to and where those shards are, please let me know. I'm all ears to hear why that is so compelling. I really am. I'm probably missing something here.
What's really
But
funny is that Erebus doesn't care. He passed him out like candy and was like, have fun.
yeah, exactly. And, like, why is Abaddon so keen on collecting all of these? I'm sure there's a reason.
I bet
But
he's not. I bet
you have
it's KP. KP wants them.
that could be. But remember, Abaddon appears and is like, gather the rest.
Because KP's been barking in his ear like the way Erebus did and with Horus.
Yeah, probably. Um, okay. I feel like pick a lane. And all of these books, Throne of Light was just as guilty of this. The Dawn of Fire book was guilty of this. Was that
Avenging
Avenging
Sun.
Sun? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah. That one was guilty of it. This one is. And as much as I hated Wolf Time, I will at least give Wolf Time credit that it told one story.
It did. It
And
had
I
one idea.
understood how everything put together. If this book, if it would have just been Orla's story, Kesh's story, and I'm going to go ahead and stop right there. If it had been Orla's and Kesh's story, then that would have made sense because all of the stuff with Artemis made sense, all of the stuff with Kesh made sense, and all of Orla's stuff made sense as an inner working plot, right? Ariadne felt out of left field. Again, you could have removed those parts and not changed the book at all. You could have removed all of the Morgan and Herrick stuff. You could have removed the Lyric stuff. But then at that point,
No, you can't. You can't remove the lyric stuff.
I don't know.
No,
I
no, I
ugh.
no, no. I think that was all very important because it was showing a lot of the how unstable the planet was, no matter what it was saying. And he's the one who killed her in the end. So I think that was all very important.
Fair, I guess. Oh, the archaeotech that they drag up
Oh,
in
the
this book.
nuclear weapons. Woohoo!
Atomics. Is it like is that what we're like? Is it just to remind us that the Imperium is dark and full of terrors? We got that message, guys. Um, I just don't understand the point of this series. And I'm with you. I feel like every book we read, I'm like Gate of Bones was the only book that I actually really enjoyed in this series. And I remember
Yes.
us kind of thinking, like, oh, maybe it was a slow start, but this is
Yeah.
really good.
I
And
loved
then the
Gate of
Wolf Time
Bones.
happened,
Yeah.
which my new favorite summary, thank you, Ross, for the Wolf Time is somebody walked home and perspectives were changed. Um, and then Throne of Light, like they're very milk toast, and it's because they're all over the board for me.
Like I remember, and I was like making my notes prepping for tonight, and I was all for those who can't see, Jen just did ultimate pout face. Um, and I was like, man, this was like the Spider-Man 3 of books. And then I was like, wait a second. I think we said that about Throne of Light too. And I pulled up my notes, and sure enough, we said that about Throne of Light. So, first of all, there never should have been one Spider-Man 3, like not even the movie. But there shouldn't have been one Spider-Man 3 version of a book, much less two. Like, I don't know where, like we've said repeatedly now, we don't know where this series is going, but by golly, we gotta figure this out in the last 5 books.
We
Because
have to pick a plot thread. So
because at least the Horus Heresy, as long as that series is, at least there's a common thread. There's that civil war all going, all going on. So at least there's got that link. I don't even so what was established in Dark Imperium was that the Indomitus Crusade was a way to try to find a way to shrink the rift. Is that what they're doing anymore? Is that what's going on? I don't even know what they're doing
I
here.
think I figured it out. So I had this epiphany as I was sitting at an ice arena for 3 hours today.
Hmm.
I live a glamorous life, guys. I had this epiphany where all of a sudden I can't figure out where they're going with it. But I figured out two things. One, Horus Rising is often looked at as a shining beacon in all of the Black Library's catalog, right?
Yeah.
And one of the reasons that people like Horus Rising so much is that there's a lot going on in Horus Rising. He throws out all kinds of little plot threads that could get picked up, right? Well, that ain't working here because either the plot threads you're throwing out have already been covered in other books or they're just not very interesting. But then I did figure out what the overarching theme here is,
Oh.
and I don't know where they're going with it. It is the imperial religion, so bear with me for a second. If you think about on Gathalamor, right, we're looking for a cardinal's ring, a corrupt cardinal's ring. Now we know that the Age of Apostasy was a very bad time for the Imperium, right? And you had a lot of people like Cardinal Bucharest who were rising up under the guise of the imperial religion to try and do some bad stuff, okay? All right. That's kind of fair.
What? Nobody's ever done that in religion before.
What? Uh, so you have that piece of it, right? You have, in this book, you have Kesh and this concept that maybe she really is a saint, like something very magical and emperor driven is going on with this. Throne of Light, obviously, that whole book is dealing a lot with the concept of the throne and this person being entombed in there. And if you remember, what is Cora Farron looking for in this Throne of Light? The Star Child, which is rumored to be the soul of the Emperor, which that's kind of a big thing for the religion thing. The next book is something about martyrs. There's this constant thread. Now, the only outlier to this book is, of course, the Wolf Time, which at this point feels like a weird crossover episode. Like, tell me I'm wrong. Like, whenever you're reading, and if anybody ever read DC or Marvel comics, you will know what I'm talking about, where you're like in the middle of like a plot thread, an arc, and you're like, this is so good, this is so good, and you rush out to get the next issue, and you're like, why the fuck is the Flash in this issue? What is the Flash talking about, right? What? What did you miss?
And then you
The
look at
crossover episode.
and then you look at the cover and it's like arc 3 of 5. You're like, I had to buy 2 other random comics.
But I was on the other story.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's a crossover episode. But that book just doesn't fit into this plot at all, really. Um,
And
this
just for that, I may like it even more.
there's a little bit that there's an undercurrent of the religion and the state. I almost feel as though this book series, the Dawn of Fire series, is more starting to wrestle with the concept of the Emperor's divinity and all of the people who surround himself under that guise of it, right? Think about how many times the sisters come up in
All
this.
right.
Think
All
of how
right.
many times the Black Templars come up in here.
Okay.
Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Let's say you're right.
Fair.
Okay.
Let's go down this particular thought experiment.
They're doing a really fucking horrible job telling that.
We are spicy tonight. I'm going to blame daylight savings time. So many F-bombs. But
No,
yes, I agree.
We're not monetized on YouTube yet anyway, so
Fair. No, I totally agree with you on that. Like, that's a fair assessment. Just because I said I figured out what they're doing didn't mean that I thought it was good.
right.
I just kind of figured it out.
I mean, I'll put it this way. If there is an overarching thread that's connecting all this, they're doing a horrible fucking job showing, explaining, whatever, what it is.
Yeah, in fact, I actually have to go to...
Because right now, it feels like spaghetti on the wall.
I feel as though, and this is why I was having this epiphany today, was that I was thinking about Horus Rising.
Oh
and I was
my
like,
god, this feels like DC Comics.
Did I mention that the comic analogy holds up?
No, just as soon as I said spaghetti on the wall, I was just like, aren't I reading something else like that? Ah, crap.
Yeah, I was
DC
right.
Comics.
It's the Martyr's Tomb is the next one. The Martyr's Tomb, which is going to feature...
God. Is that tomb going to have a magical item?
I don't know, but if it has a raider, I'll be really happy. They have the Templars and the Sisters are on the cover. The two most religious, devout groups. Like, this is definitely becoming something like that. And I totally agree with you, but I think that I feel like this is the most meandering because, again, just look at this on the surface, all right? The first book is all about Bob getting the Primaris, right? And then, like, Guy Haley put in all these little plot threads with what is going on with, I can't even think of his name right now. Is it Primus? The guy who's, like, clearly
yeah.
amalgam of all of the, yeah, that guy, the chimeric guy. Like, clearly not very good. There's a whole bunch that he sees in that. And then the second book is about Gathalamor, where they're going after to find this ring. And you're like, oh, okay, abrupt shift, but interesting, okay. Then the third book is about the Space Wolves. Okay. Then the fourth book kind of goes and picks up after Gathalamor, but also has a bunch of other stuff going on in it. And then this book kind of picks up after Gathalamor, but also kind of picks up after the first book. So it's almost as if this book is trying to be like, okay, I'm trying to link it all together.
Maybe.
And bless his heart for trying. Bless you.
And if that is what he was trying to do, that explains why it's such a mess. There's so many plot threads. There's so many
Yeah.
plots just going on. I mean, and that may 100% be the case, but I'm already dealing with one meandering series, and I know I've put that upon myself for reading that whole thing, but I'm beginning to feel duped with the Dawn of Fire series.
Very much so. And look, stylistically, are these pretty? Oh my god, yes. I love the details. I love that every book has like the little sigils down here for whoever's like really taking front and center, which is weird that the Black Templars, but whatever. Um, they look nice, they feel nice, they're very pretty. I like them. Obviously, I want to continue to support Black Library, and because I've started this damn series in limited edition, I gotta finish it out. Um, but I'm with you. I feel completely like I thought this was going to go back and explain the Indomitus Crusade, and it feels
It feels like I'm not
proper.
even. It's not even part of the Indominus Crusade. It feels like this is all like the prep for the Crusade.
Very much so. It kind of feels like the foreplay, and I almost feel like the Indomitus Crusade is happening out on the wings of it. And like they'll kind of mention, because it keeps saying this, like, you're going over ideas we've already seen. We already saw in Watchers of the Throne 2 Electric Boogaloo, we saw him dealing with the Imperials and dealing with the politics done better, quite frankly.
Mm-hmm.
Assassinorum Kingmaker, we saw that the night, if his point was to show, like, the Night Houses are really a weird faction and they have their own thing going on, yeah, we already saw it. Seen it.
Also, they were weird back in the Horus Heresy, so I don't know why people would think that it got any better in 10,000 years.
Yeah. Like, it kind of like the Mechanicus too, right? Like, the Mechanicus is kind of weird and does its own thing. Yes, they always have.
Mm-hmm.
This is not news. It's it's a very weird series, and I don't feel as though, like, was there an original thought and then it got thrown away? Like, one of my, and I know I've referenced this before, but one of my favorite, if you ever want something kind of funny on the internet, this is from like the early aughts. There was an Ask a Ninja guy, and he did a movie review for Pirates of the Caribbean 2 Dead Man's Chest. And it's absolutely hilarious. But one of the things he mentions in there is he's just like, well, I think that like the original plot got lost, so they just loaded a bunch of scripts into a shotgun and then fired it out and glued it back together. But then eventually that got lost. And so they would just sit around being like, oh, this person shows up and they're a pirate now. Like, I feel like that's what this was. Whatever
Man, that's
plan.
probably the best description of Pirates of the Caribbean 2 and 3 I've ever heard.
Oh, it is so worth going and watching. I mean, the video is from like 2003. I mean, it's like right after that movie came out. It is funny. Um, but yeah, like I think there was a plot. I think there was a plan for this, but it's clearly been lost. Or not everyone. Like maybe they had a meeting and everyone was like, "Oh, I know what it's about," and then they went off and they haven't gotten back together to talk again.
Yeah, do
I don't know, because of Nick Kyme's position, he's like, okay, I gotta loop all of these books together. I gotta bring them all together. How do I do this? You don't, friend. And I'm gonna be real honest and say I'm really dreading reading 5 more of these.
Yeah,
The Martyr's Tomb.
because
Sure,
yeah,
I
I wasn't looking forward to the second book because I didn't enjoy Avenging Sun, but then Gate of Bones is like, okay, I'm on board. This is cool. And then
yeah.
Wolf Time came, and I actually liked Wolf Time, mainly to antagonize Jen, but I liked Wolf Time. Then Throne of Light came, I was like, what are we doing?
What even are we doing?
And then now Iron Kingdom, what are we doing?
And like they talk about, when I was like, I had to go and pull this back up because I was like, I think they actually said this, so I had to go back and look up that the Martyr's Tomb. It says, as the Kingdom of Iron is secured.
I guess.
Okay, I guess. So is it gonna? Are you mentioning that as like we're checking down a list here of things he needs to do, or
It's Gollum's to-do list. Iron Kingdom, check.
Or are you just
Space
having to,
Wolves, check.
or do you guys realize that like we've lost the plot, and now you have to remind us? No, 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 they are all connected. We promise.
Is this Dick Kyme's way of like re-steering the ship?
Right? Maybe. Um, I don't know. I absolutely don't know, and I'm not enjoying this series at all. All right, let me ask you this as our final question, and then because we've gone long tonight, but if you could do one thing to fix the Dawn of Fire series, what would you do?
And I saw these questions way before we started, and I didn't have an answer then, and I don't have an answer now, because my answer is to go back in time and not do it at all. Um, but obviously, I can't do that. I could fix it. Well, how would you fix it? Maybe it'll stir some thoughts.
Narrative and focus on that. Make this kind of like the Horus Heresy is tangentially related, but it's all working towards one key story. I don't even know what the key story is that they're working towards in this. I don't know what's going on. I don't know that there is one key unifying story other
But
than the Indomitus Crusade, but that's
but
a pretty vague.
that's the problem, right? Because I would say that too if thought there even was a key story, but I don't even know what it is.
It would go back to Gate of Bones. The most pressing story that we were presented was this idea of them trying to get this ring to make a super weapon, right? With Tenebris and Yang. Focus on that. The main antagonist of this series is Tenebris, Yang, and to a lesser extent, Corferin, who's really pulling Tenebris's strings, right? Like, okay, let's focus on that. Let's focus on them trying to get this ring. Let's focus on this super weapon. Let's focus on, or
How does that have anything to do with the original point of the Indomitus Crusade, which was to try to find a way to solve the rift? Is that just gone? Because that was the original point of the Indomitus Crusade. They even talked about it in Avenging Sun. And now it's like, I don't even know what they're doing because now this whole idea of, KP coming up with this, super weapon thing. Okay. How does this fit in? How is this involved in the Indomitus Crusade?
oh, then you know what? And then maybe is that the focus of this? Is how Bob collects all these vital resources? I guess. I
That's
don't know. I'm with you. I don't know, but I like if I could, and it would involve maybe a little bit of back and forth, or back in time, or maybe not. No, we're not going to go back in time. From this point forward, this series needs to explain to me who, what, when, where, why, how, and more importantly, why should we care? Like, make Tenebris your main villain. Now we've got Herrick, and like I understand there's a lot of moving pieces and there's
well, I
a lot of
mean,
people, and
Tenebris
I
is
understand
really
that.
working for KP, so I mean,
I love that you won't even say his name, by the way.
because I hate him.
Sorry, it's totally fair. Um, that would be how I would fix it, though. Is pick one narrative and tell me that. And with all of these books, focus, 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 focus. If you want to jump around between like Orla and then Serenial and then Kesh, and that's fine. That's fine. Do that. Like bounce around all these different characters. I understand that. Tell the story from multiple point of views, but it needs to be very clearly linked
What
and
is
not
the
feel like,
story?
whoa, where did this come from? It's not good when like the whole Morrigan plot, the whole time I kept wondering, but what does this have to do with the price of tea in China? What does anything with this have to do? And same with Herrick too. And even I'll be honest and say that by the time I got to the end of the book, what did this have to do with the book? Like, what does this have to do with the story?
Which is exactly why I would have liked the book 100% if it didn't have that epilogue.
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess it would have made Herrick's story arguably more pointless, but maybe better for it. then we could have just been sitting here going, well, that was kind of weird, but whatever.
Well, I mean, like on the one hand, it explained why he suddenly just disappeared off the ship because as soon as they said shards of Erebus, I was like, ah, okay, yes,
Yeah.
that
Well, as
would
soon as he cut through reality, I was like, oh, good,
that
this
would
again.
that would just warp them, and you know, totally random that it warps him to the admiral's ship where he's just like, ha, skulls. Why though? Like,
Why?
why there? Why not his own ship? It was just weird. It was, I don't know. I mean, yes, I get the admiral was kind of a jerk, but he was doing his job.
Yeah,
He
can you push back on that and say, was he though? Because, like, you have to be kind of a dick to get to that level in the real world. Like, they say that
well,
everybody who makes to, like,
okay,
see
maybe not
CEO
that, but
leadership are sociopaths.
he may not have been like that caring, but he's an admiral of this huge fleet. No, he's
Hmm.
not just an admiral, he's the Lord Admiral of this huge fleet.
Yeah.
He's got lots of people depending on him, he's got lots of things to do, and he's on Gulliman's timeline, which, as like Messinius came in and was just like, ha ha, why don't you have this yet? Yeah, there are problems. Yeah, well, you solve it or we will. So, like, I I could tell they were trying to make it that we were supposed to hate him, but I didn't because I was
Hmm.
like, he's doing what any admiral would do.
He is. And again, I know I said it, but again, like, when you look at, they say this is not untrue. Like, people who make it to be CEOs and GMs and strong leadership positions, they have several traits of sociopaths, several sociopathic traits, right? It's not, I'm not even saying it to be like facetious or anything. Like, that's an actual thing. You have to be a little cold-blooded to get up to that level, and that's in the real world. So doubly so, like, in the Warhammer 40k universe. So this guy, yeah, he's going to be a bit of a dick. And once you get to that level, you do not have the benefit of thinking on a myopic,
Right.
small, micro scale. You think on the macro scale. And yes, the person to whom you were reporting directly is a primarch.
The Lord Regent of the entire Imperium. So,
So yeah, I think I was supposed to be really like satisfied when Herrick kills him. I really felt nothing. It was just
yeah.
kind of like, oh, all right. Like, he wasn't. I was like, oh, such a good character. Oh my god, he was such a good leader. But I was just like, this is just a guy.
But
He's just a guy.
he was a good leader, but it felt like it was just random. Like,
Yes, I would
okay.
agree.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah. All right, now he's dead now, I guess, and sure.
Right.
Yeah, just like, I feel like, so when I closed this book, despite my saying like I hated this book, which I did, but I got to the end and my first reaction was, I guess. That was basically my reaction to the end of this book. Sure. Why not? I just work here. Just saying.
Right.
I yeah, this was a hard one. And the Dawn of Fire series, like, I know we still have 5 more books, but I'm like, I is my general reaction to the being more books.
Right. Well, probably need to wrap this up. Going on way too long.
Our next book, Growing.
Yeah, here's my copy.
Here's my copy.
Yep. And
I did.
Grown, The Red Angel by David Geimer. Haven't seen anything by him for a while, so the only reason why I'm agreeing to reading this book, because everyone knows I just love Angron and the World Eaters, is because of David Geimer.
Sure.
Yep. Jen just likes her rage monsters. So
I love my big stupid rage monsters. They
I'm telling you, his pincer chin just it bothers me. Like I'm gonna see this when I close my eyes tonight. Bothers me.
it it's actually the jawbone spikes and then these random spikes and then yeah, the pincher spikes. Like, they should be
He
useful.
looks fun at parties.
It's fine until the cake runs out.
And the thing is, I could totally see that being a thing.
Do you want to take us out, Karen?
Yes, please. It's, it's so late.
I know.
You've listened to the Warhammer 40k Book Club episode regarding the Iron Kingdom by Nick Kyme. Be sure to join us next time for Angron, the Red Angel by David Geimer. We are an unofficial book club and not affiliated with the Black Library or any of its affiliates. You can find both the vidcast and podcast on our website, WH40kbookclub.com. If you like the episode, please like, subscribe, give a review, and all those good things to the vidcast on YouTube or the podcast anywhere you get podcasts. Our site also has articles about adventures and reading other Warhammer 40k books and short stories outside of the book club books. So please stay a while, and read from a Crag. I'm tired. I got nothing.
Me too. I'm going straight to bed. Good night, everyone.
Good night.